The sound of praise for your Sunday morning.
The only one who could ever teach me.
Introducing Reverend A.R. Bernard of the Christian Cultural Center.
Was the son of a preacher man.
And Rabbi Joseph Potasnik of Religion on the Line.
The only one who could ever teach me.
Now, on Talk Radio 77 WABC, here's the Rev and the Rabbi, where faith matters.
Good morning, I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, I was thinking, years ago I was on a station, I won't mention the station, and I've read the Ten Commandments. At the end of my presentation, the announcement comes on, and the views expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the station, its management, or whatever. So, no matter where you go, you got, people are always looking at what you're saying. Now, oh, wait a minute, is that okay to say? This is a very, very important weekend, Rev, in that we have MLK inauguration. But I really want to hear, we're going to talk about the inauguration, obviously, because we have Peter King later on in the program. But I want to hear with you your thoughts on where we are in terms of MLK, because years ago, I remember everything almost stopped. People gather all these programs. Does it still resonate as much as it did before?
One of the things that is so important is to keep things alive when it comes to historic events that have taken place that have been agents of change within a society like America. I mean, you guys are the perfect example. You will not let the memory of the Holocaust die.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
You can't. You have to continually bring it up again and again and again. Even people, say enough already. It's been so many years, we've moved on. No, because the present is rooted in the past. If we don't reflect, if we don't take time to reconsider, history can repeat itself. Because humans, are who they are and what they are.
And Holocaust didn't occur in a vacuum. You look at what happened prior to that. And the hatred or the racism, anti-black sentiment didn't just happen overnight. It was pervasive for many years. Yeah. And so that's the thing. So for me, number one, I'm glad that it's been memorialized on a holiday, on the American calendar. And I'm glad that, events continue to take place across the country. I will be down in Atlanta tomorrow with Dr. Bernice King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, and we'll be holding a convening of leaders to talk about where we are and where do we need to go from here. And it's important that we continue to do these things because you have to constantly remind people of the past. Otherwise, it becomes myth and legend. But
then you have the stories questioning whether it really took place, right?
Yeah. We have that. We have deniers, Holocaust revisionists, Holocaust deniers. But what I find sometimes happens is that we focus on the past, which we must. We focus on the hatred, which we must. But we don't give enough time to the accomplishments, to what we've been able to overcome and where we are, right? It's not all dark. There are so many glorious moments. And I think sometimes people need to hear that. I'm talking as a Jew, whether you're talking as an African-American, but people need to hear that we're just not doomed, so to speak.
Yeah, I think a balanced reflection is important. But, there are people, Rabbi, who are concerned that, if they celebrate it too much, that people will think everything is wonderful and all of a sudden we don't have to worry about these things anymore. I get it. I understand that. But I do think we need to do both. We need to celebrate the fact that we are not where we were 60 years ago. But at the same time, we've still got a ways to go. We haven't arrived. I think balance is the key to life. balance is the key to maintaining a consciousness within a society of its shortfalls and, its checkered past. That's what's critical. There's a
Yep.
wonderful passage in Ecclesiastes where it says that we are to avoid all extremes and maintain a balance between the two,
You,
and that is real.
I saw a quotation of King, which is ultimately the genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus.
Mm.
And I thought that's an important statement. That you don't have to just go out looking for it; you have to create it. You have to you have to bring people together. And in looking at many of his speeches and many of his quotations, he was really one who was steadfast in his commitment to hope. No matter what was going on, he wouldn't leave an audience without talking about the hope for tomorrow.
He and again, nonviolent resistance, turning the other cheek, loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, as well as your neighbor. I mean, these were radical ideas that Dr. King bought into, and to be fully committed to it the way that he was, it took that kind of person for a movement to be successful. There were other organizations at play, many different individuals and leaders at play, each contributing, some pushing back. But the reason Dr. King is celebrated the way he is because he was steadfast and unmovable when it came to his conviction about nonviolent action. And he brought a conviction to the conscience of a society, as to its practice of segregation, of racism, of marginalization of people of color. So it absolutely amazing,
Does it resonate with young people today? The story when you talk about King, is that someone who just, that was a long time ago, but not today.
I have conversations with all. When I say all kinds, young people are at different stages of knowledge and understanding, but this generation is very aware of the past because they seek to investigate it. They're trying to understand why things are the way they are because they're bringing indictments against the present and our institutions because more hasn't been done, because there's still these issues that have carried over for the last, 100 years or 60 years or 50 years. So they're approaching it differently. And they have instant access to the history to pull it up and shape their opinions. Now you put that on top of social media, 24-hour news cycle, and all of these voices that are coming at them, calling for their attention and trying to influence their perspective on things. So this is a very interesting generation that we're seeing here.
There's an inscription in an Israeli museum as you're walking out, and it says to look back at the past, to live in the present, and to look forward to the future. I think you got to put all of those together, right? And if you really want to have a healthier future, you have to look back at the horrors of the past. You have to know what path not to travel on, what is not the way to go, so you can figure out which is the way to go.
Right. I mean, you know in the scripture the word remember.
Yeah.
That is such an important word. Rehearse these things in the ears of your children. I've practiced that, passing on my faith values to, my grandchildren and now my great-grandchildren. But remember is a very powerful word. You and I spoke about this on one particular program. We have to remember.
Without being totally negative, because we want young people to know this is what happened, but this is what doesn't have to happen going forward if we make certain changes. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. We got a good guest on today, someone obviously well known.
Wait. Did you call him a good guest? You can't call Peter King a good guest. A great guest. A great guest.
An extraordinary guest. No, the word I hear recurrently is amazing. This is amazing. He's an amazing guest.
There you go. There you
right,
go. Because I'm sure he's listening in the green room. So make sure you get it right.
I saw him putting on some makeup. Yeah. All right.
So we'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi, and an incredible conversation with our guest former Congressman Peter King. Stay tuned.
Where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, we refer to him as America's congressman. I like to think he's more intergalactical because everyone knows him. He's everywhere. And I'm referring to Congressman Peter King. Good morning, Congressman.
Rabbi, it's great to be with you. Reverend, great to be with you. And let's have a great Sunday.
Yeah.
Have you ever been called intergalactical, Congressman?
He's been called many things.
Like that. Intergalactical, man. That's cool.
Guys,
yeah, maybe there was a new pronoun or something. I don't know what that was.
all right, let's make it easier for you guys.
Okay, it is something.
The ubiquitous Congressman.
Ubiquitous.
Okay, here you go.
We're the day before the inauguration of our new president, President Donald Trump, President-elect to be President Donald Trump. So where do you want to start with the conversation, Rabbi?
Well, Congressman has been, I think, goes back to Grover Cleveland when it comes to inaugurations. No, but you've been to it now. I've been to some of them. Talk about the mood of, here it is. It's a major moment. The country is still divided. How do you address that? How do we get the country in a better place? What can we do? I mean, I have some thoughts. I want to hear yours. But talk about what the inaugurational moment means for you.
Well, to me, this is a culmination of democracy. This is what it's all about. No matter who wins or who loses, the fact is that we were the first real democracy, I guess, in the Greeks years ago. But in the modern world, it's been United States. It's a tremendous experiment. And with all of the local governments, or all of the city and county governments, state governments, et cetera, Congress, the Senate, the fact is it's the presidency, which is the culmination of democracy. That's where, to me, the whole country comes together. They vote. It used to be everybody on one day, but now it's at least everybody within a certain period of days. They come out. It's an expression of the national opinion, and we should be celebrating that. That should be a celebration in itself. If your candidate wins, that's even better. So we should be there trying to establish some sort of unity. And even like, for instance, FDR during the Depression, he could have stood up there and rightly or wrongly attacked Republicans for all the problems that they caused with depression, all of their failed policies, if you wanted to put it that way. No, instead he said, all we have to fear, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And to me, that is really what we should be saying as Americans, that no matter what issue, no matter what challenge confronts us, the only thing we have to fear is not standing together, united, and having the courage to confront those challenges. So I would hope that President Trump, and I know it's not always easy for him to do it, but somehow try to find some common ground, and on the issues where we disagree, try to find some way to express that we can try to resolve them as one, and if not, we will still continue to be a united country. So I would try to emphasize the positive part of what that day is about as he's articulating what he plans doing forward, put it in a more positive light. Yeah. Whether it be done or not, I don't know. It can be difficult. But that's what we should be doing. And I think I'm saying this as a Republican, we should not be doing victory laps down there. We should be basically saying, hey, we are pleased, we're delighted, we're happy. But what we're most happy for is that the United States is still united.
Shouldn't we expect that level of maturity from the chief executive of the nation? Shouldn't we expect that level of maturity?
No, we should. We certainly should. No, we should expect it. Whether we get it or not is another story. But no, that should be what America is about. That should be what what we stand for. That should be the clarion call, really. But again, whether we get it or not, I don't know. And you can ask who's right and who's wrong, who started it. I think it's important for somebody to have the leadership to come forward and end it, to stop that bit of partisan rivalry for the sense of fighting. Listen, there's nothing wrong with a clash of ideas, But again, underlying all that should be we are the greatest country in the world. And with it all, no matter how the specific fight or battle turns out, we still stand united.
Right.
When people say to me, how do we bring the country together? I say, well, what are you doing? You've heard the adage of how are you going to clean up the world if you don't clean up your own room? And, people need to get more engaged in their local politics as well. And it's not just looking from afar and saying, well, you need to do more to bring the country together. People need to be active, community activists, so to speak. Then you, in your own way, are contributing to more unity in the country. Unity and diversity.
What I found very frustrating in politics is, this is general talk. The general clamor is we have to have unity, we have to stand together, we have to stop all the petty infighting and partisan fighting. And yet, when you do reach out across the aisle, when you do work with the other side, you're attacked by so many people as being a sellout. You're a traitor, you're a rhino, you're giving in. So, and many of those are the same people who, when it was going against them, were yelling about partisanship. But when it's going for them, they want you to be partisan, and it's really it is frustrating. And it's I hate to say, the bottom line is the American people get what they ask for, and the country is divided, the Congress is divided, and the Congress reflects the people. But you would hope that at a time like that, someone can step forward and rise above it and rally the people to that idea, not of giving up your values, your ideas, or your principles, but giving up this whole feeling that we're morally right and they're morally wrong. And that right. To me is it's really out of place.
Now, Congressman, the rabbi fought me hard on this, but being the only person of color in this conversation, I want to go right to the question of MLK Day. I mean, January 20th is Martin Luther King Day. That's going to be celebrated across the country, events like this. But the reality is, Congressman, that the 20th of January was by amendment, the 20th Amendment back in 1937, ratified that the vice president and president's official office ends at noon on the 20th of January. So it's not like Donald Trump picked that day to snub MLK or anything like that. And yet that's, some of the conversation that's going around. This goes back to, 1937 and established protocol. And I think it's important that we understand that because, everybody spins things to add to the chaos, to add to the polarization. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, the inauguration used to be on March 4th, and it was moved up to January 20th. But you mentioned Martin Luther King. Well, that's an example. Maybe it could be serendipitous, or whatever the right word is, that you have the inauguration and Martin Luther King fall on the same day, that the president used that as an opportunity. Cite Martin Luther King. You don't have to agree with everything Martin Luther King said or did, but find things that he did say that have universal appeal and apply them to the inauguration. To use that as an example of how we can come together. So take advantage of the fact that I guess it's propitious is the word I was looking for. That both dates coincide.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to give up, your causes. I mean, when we talk about unity, it doesn't mean everybody has to be on the same side, but you have to stand back a bit and say, I am proud to be part of this country. My father, when he became a citizen, used to walk around and used to show me his citizenship paper. It was signed by then Senator Leverett Saltonstall of Massachusetts. Yeah. But he was proud to have that in his pocket. Not that he agreed with policy all the time, but the bigger picture was he was proud to be part of a great country. And I think that's, you tune on, you listen to some of these broadcasters, and all you hear is what is wrong with America. There's nothing right.
And the fact is that this is still the great experiment, and there's more right in this country as far as what we do. I mean, listen, you can point to this and that, but how many countries have so many different races, religions, creeds, and even within countries, how many people have Irish, Northern Irish, Southern Irish? I mean, people who are killing each other on the other side, they come over here and they find ways to work together. all the different parts of Italy, of Germany. We go through the whole list of even countries, even people coming here from the same country have divisions back home, but in this country they can work together. Then you think we have Asians, Africans, Central Americans, South Americans. We can go through all of it. That's a great experiment. So that is working. And just the fact we're able to do that, well, maybe all the details don't fall into place, but the overriding picture, it's still a great picture. It really is.
Talk about the confirmation hearings, because I think it's almost like playing gotcha, right? How can I find fault if I'm on the other side? I've yet to hear any Democrats say anything favorable about anybody who's, seeking confirmation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know when this began, but I guess John Tower was one of them back in 1988. But it's the idea is that, and then I know when Bill Clinton came in, the Republicans were able to block a few attorneys general nominees. And sometimes you have to get one scalp. And like they're saying today, okay, they'll go easier on Marco Rubio, but they're going to aim for Pete Hegseth, or they're going to aim for Robert Kennedy Jr. So I wish they could be more intelligent. And also the fact that you have senators who get 15 minutes to ask a question, and they spend 14 minutes and 45 seconds giving a speech. Yeah. I mean, that serves absolutely no purpose whatsoever. So maybe they're appealing to the people back home. They want to get their soundbite on television. I don't know. But it's just, to me, is wrong.
And it's a public leveraging. I mean, everybody's pushing agendas. They're looking for the gotcha moment, the attempts to disqualify. Is it all politics? You were on the inside, Congressman. Is it all the political game that's played, and then everybody goes out to dinner at the same steakhouse at the end of the day?
I would say
how do we, the public, understand it?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the people in Washington are not going out to dinner with each other as often as they used to. And it used to be politics was confined to sort of the political season, which would be maybe the primaries, maybe the 6 weeks before the general election. But now, with social media, with 24/7 cable TV coverage, monitoring, everyone knows what's going on all the time. So every moment is a campaign moment. It used to be, and again, for better or worse, it used to be that campaigns would speed up in the fall, and then for the most part, people didn't follow the intricacies of politics. Now, if you go out to dinner with somebody on the other side, your picture appears in the paper, and it becomes a scandal. Yeah. So it's a lot tougher that way, and also politicians give into it more. They can score more cheap points or easy points. And it used to be in the past, a lot was done, not that it was secretive, but it was done like below the radar screen, and there were certain things that were agreed on, and you would go ahead and proceed. Now, everything becomes a battle. And if you don't, there's somebody in your party is going to stand up and make a great moral issue out of it. They're going to be the ones who are uncovering all of these secret deals, or someone who's going to act as if they're the only one that has any sense of integrity or honor in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and they come across as the heroes, the crusader, whatever term we want to use.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because you would hope that we've come a long way and we've moved forward in terms of how we handle things. When you said that, it used to be like this, it used to be like that. What happened to us? I mean, Congressman, you've been in office for quite a while. You know the inner workings, as I said. You've watched American culture change. You've watched politics change over time. Why are we where we are?
Yeah, listen, there was always a certain degree of partisanship. There was always a certain amount of one-upmanship. What's made it, though, much more dramatic, or much more dangerous, almost, I'd say, is the combination of 24/7 media coverage, social media, and also, for instance, in Congress with redistricting, the way the lines for districts are drawn these days, whichever party controls that state, they can guarantee certain districts are going to always be, I say always, 99% of the time are going to be Democrat, 99% going to be Republican, which means that there's no pressure on the people from those districts to reach out to the other side. What they have to worry about is being opposed in a party primary by people in their own primary, by someone who is going to be purer than they are. So if you do reach out and you do compromise, you run the risk of losing the primary to someone, because the primary, there's different rules of thumb in politics. One of them is that that maybe 5 or 10% of each party is crazy. The other one is that about 20% of people come out in primaries. Well, you can be sure the crazy ones are going to come out. So they have an undue influence on picking a candidate. And so that's been a real factor. And ultimately, unless the people rise up, and I don't mean rise up in the street, I'm not into that, but unless they really let their voice be heard and stay more engaged themselves during the year, and not believe every email they get or every notice they get, everything they see on Facebook or TikTok or wherever, that so-and-so is a traitor, or someone is selling out senior citizens, or someone is selling out veterans, or someone is selling out, whatever particular group it happens to be. Because when you're involved in it, it's a lot more complicated than that. There are very few issues. And, the overall principles can be fairly, not easy, but can be pretty specific. The details of working that out and the compromise that goes into it can be very difficult. And that's where it gets taken all out of context. Like, people look at a certain budget. What's this in there? It means nothing. It doesn't do anything for me. It's a waste of money. Well, the fact is, to get other things passed, you had to make that compromise to a person, let's say, from a farming state or a fishing state or whatever it happens to be, to get their vote, to get the overall package done. That's what democracy is.
So in a confirmation hearing, if you're on the opposing party, you don't say anything positive about the person seeking confirmation? There's no statement saying, I want to thank you for what you did here. It's right away, let me try to find some way to, throw you off.
For the most part, that's the rule. What I would say is that the only exceptions to that rule are if there's someone who the other party knows is very popular with the public and is going to be nominated anyway, you pick that person and say great things about them to show that you're bipartisan. And then you unleash on the others.
It's strategy. It's all strategy. Circling back to something that Rabbi brought up in the beginning of the conversation, he pointed out the importance of local elections. And it seems like we as a public don't appreciate or understand that. We rally around the presidential election, which is going to get the most coverage and traction in terms of influence in shaping public opinion. But really, it begins at a local level, because when a president is elected, they now have to deal with what has been determined already at a local level. Can you speak to that, the importance of that and understanding that, Congressman?
Yeah, absolutely. Unless there's a war or a natural disaster, in the short term, people's lives are going to be much more affected by what happens locally. And probably the more local and little known as it is, they're the office holders that have the most to say, whether it's a school board, which determines educational policy, which determines how schools are going to be run, whether it's a town, which is in charge of sanitation, picking up the garbage, making sure the parks are there, making sure the senior citizen facilities engaged, whether it's the city or the county, which are going to have the police and the fire departments to make sure that they are working, the social services departments. And then also they would have jurisdiction to a large extent over hospitals, which has so much to say about healthcare. Mm-hmm. I mean, those elections often, and you see it, there's a tremendous fall off. I mean, usually the more local the election, the smaller the turnout, and yet they're the ones who affect and impact your day-to-day life more than any others.
Yeah. Talk about that warm exchange between Presidents Obama and Trump at the Carter funeral. Some people
you
thought,
were going to get there.
Some people thought, some people thought, that was shameful, and other people thought that was a great moment for the country.
Oh, actually, what I understand, Donald Trump was saying to Obama, the best thing about living in Florida, I'm away from that Rabbi Potasnik.
Yeah, that got back to me. Yeah.
I would think, again, I have no idea, but if I would bet, when politicians get together, Trump could be talking about coming into office, getting it set up, how much cooperation he's getting or not getting from Joe Biden, how the Democrats are going to treat him, but more in a way of two old soldiers talking rather than complaining, and just, I guess, going over the campaign. I don't think either one of them has any great love for Kamala Harris. or maybe even for Joe Biden for that matter. It seems to be, obviously Trump doesn't get along with them, and President Obama, it appears he's at a distance from, the Bidens and also from Kamala Harris. So it could have been some of that, just small talk, or maybe even, Jimmy Carter. I mean, I know they were saying great things about Jimmy Carter in death, and Trump never really had any dealings with Carter. I do know that the Obama administration and Clinton administration had real differences with Jimmy Carter when they were president, how they felt that Jimmy Carter was undercutting them, whether it was in Haiti or sometimes in Africa, in the Middle East. And he was, that's why if you ever see those group pictures of the presidents, there's one famous one, I guess, in the Oval Office. We have 4 presidents, I guess. It's the 2 Bushes, Obama, and Clinton, and then about a foot off to the side by himself.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter. So it could have been that. It could have been like, hey, when are you dead? Then they'll say good things about you, something like that. It's because they were smiling, and it didn't seem forced. Kamala Harris didn't seem to be too happy about it, but that's another story.
Right.
We see the gathering of presidents like that for such a special occasion, and we try to understand the relationships that exist between these presidents. And the public is trying to figure it out. So it's interesting how many comments came about. I mean, social media went wild, just observing, what they call the president's club.
Yeah.
And some of them, I do know. I mean, you hear presidents who did reach out. I know, for instance, that Bill Clinton got advice from Richard Nixon. He spoke about that in his first year in office. He spoke to President Nixon quite a bit. Obviously, Carter and Ford got along fairly well as far as reaching out to each other. I think Bush 41 was also had dealings with the other presidents, and I don't know how close Bush 43 was, but I don't know of any feuds. Now Donald Trump, I think it could serve him well now that he's done one term himself. In the second term, when crises do come up, to call President Obama anyway to say, hey, how would you handle this? What do you think? Can I talk to Chuck Schumer on this? Can I talk to Hakeem Jeffries? Do you see any way we can go forward? And sometimes you do it that way, you can have somebody else be your third party, to be your intermediary, to set up a meeting which seems spontaneous but really isn't. And so that, to me, is worth it, because not every issue has to go down fighting to the death, because we're going to end up getting nothing done.
Yeah. Right. Is it easy, Congressman, to move beyond the rhetoric of the campaign to actually working together? Look, they're human beings, and sometimes you get so wounded, you get angry, and you don't want to work together for the good of the country. What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, you can. I mean, most of the opponents I ran against, I was lucky for the 14 races for Congress, I won them all. So it was easy for me to be the nice guy. But on the other hand, I ran for Attorney General against Bob Abrams. And except for the 1.2 million votes I lost by, I ran a run.
And you asked for a recount yet? Yeah.
No, I was afraid if I did, it would come out worse. So I mean, he had more funding than I did. He was and I'm giving him the credit for this now. He was definitely the front runner all along. So I had to make charges against him. I had to go at him, and I ran a pretty tough campaign. I mean, I'm proud of it, but it was tough, and I could see how he could have taken it more personally. I would say the night of the election, and then afterwards, whenever I'd see him, we'd be friendly, get along, we'd joke about things. We had some common causes, and when he wrote his book, I gave him I was happy to give him a good statement for it. So you can. So for the most part, you can. I know that certainly Al D'Amato and Chuck Schumer had a bitter campaign, and for the most part, they get along, they understand each other. When you're in it, it's almost like two fighters. They go the whole 10 rounds, 12 rounds, 15 rounds, whatever it used to be, and they're literally trying to kill each other in the ring. And then you see them together afterwards at different dinners and events, and usually the further away you get from it, maybe the better. But I would think in this, you've been through it. If you made it to the finish line and you won, or if you lost, you understand what the other person went through, and you can find some common ground to talk about.
So what about the Karen Pence moment when Mike Pence stands up, shakes Trump's hand, Pence's wife sits there, just looks down at her program? What's your thought on that one?
Well, you're assuming the worst. I assume she was praying. That's why she didn't want to.
Yeah.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
I think you will find in politics that family members, especially spouses, take it more personally than the person who's actually in the arena. And so I can see Karen Pence feeling that way. I mean, listen, Mike Pence, they were crowds chanting, hang Mike Pence, and President Trump did nothing to come to his defense. I mean, Mike Pence was a loyal vice president. I don't mean a hack of this one law. He was loyal. He stood. He never said one thing and meant another. When it came to President Trump, he supported him. He fought for him, and in the end, President Trump was not there for him. And so, I was not at all surprised that Mike Pence, did what he did. And I don't know Karen Pence. I've only met her a few times, but I can understand his spouse feeling that way. They often take it more personally. Because like my wife, I'll be on even just a radio show, and I can't believe what that guy said about you. And I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah. And she's talking about Curtis. Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, the thing is, she said worse things about me. But
What was your favorite inauguration? Was there a special one you went to that? Did you go to the Reagan inauguration?
Yeah, I was at I was at Nixon's in 72. I was at Reagan's in 80. And then I've been at all of them since then. Yeah, 88, yeah. 84, there was none because of the weather. There was no ceremony. It was all indoors. So I've made all of them since 1972, except for Carter in 76 and for Reagan's second one in 84. Well, the one which I was not personally the most excited about, but made the most impact on me, was President Obama. I mean, the crowd, you couldn't believe it. My apartment in Washington was maybe, 3 miles from the White House. My family was with me. We had to walk to the Capitol that day because the subways, everything was so crowded. I never, ever saw a crowd like that. It was entirely peaceful. And they had police from all over the country to monitor it. I got stopped like 4 blocks from the Capitol by some cop from Missouri who told me I couldn't get in. I said, well, I'm a congressman. Oh, I'm sorry. I was that. I mean, that's how it was. That was probably the most enthusiastic I've seen. I would say the other one was probably Reagan's first. That was really a great ceremony to that. But they all have a certain ring to them. I mean, it was a certain certainly when Bush won in 2000 and 2001 at the inauguration. I mean, he won, and that easily could have gone either way. It's a 5-4. It was about a couple hundred votes in Florida, a 5-4 decision of the Supreme Court, and yet there was Al Gore was up there, Bill Clinton was there. Bush was there. There was nothing in Bush's speech that was at all antagonistic. So I thought that was handled very well. Gore handled it very well. And then George Bush in 2004, also after the that was in the aftermath of 9/11. It was during Iraq, so there was a certain tension there, but also a feeling that the country had come a long way. So I would say that. And then the Trump inauguration in 2017, that was probably the most, sharp as far as, Donald Trump held back nothing of what he said. He went ahead and so not that he was personally antagonistic to the other side, but it didn't find much common ground. Also, it was a dark, dreary day, and there was a hostility out in the streets, demonstrations, and none of the others, except maybe Nixon's a little bit in 72, was any really street demonstrations the way there were against Donald Trump. Obviously, I was not there for Biden's. We had January 6th before that. But I know with President Trump, my family and I, my wife and my daughter, my son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren, we went to one of the inaugural balls. And it was really dangerous out in the street. Stuff was being thrown. It was very hostile. And so that had a different tone to it that night.
Wow. Congressman, tomorrow is MLK Day. We memorialize it with a holiday just to remind us that we're still on this journey towards the dream that Dr. King spoke about in his incredible speech, some 60 years ago. Where do you see the nation on issues of race, equity, moving towards this dream of diversity and all American citizens having full participation in the social and political life of our nation. Where do you see us today?
Well, I think we've made extraordinary progress. Now, if I was on the inside living in an inner city neighborhood, maybe I wouldn't feel as enthused about it. But I think we're making tremendous amount of progress, and also small things. I mean, now there's not even a mention when you see an African American in a starring role. I mean, obviously, whether it's sports or entertainment, whether it's education, whether it's intermarriage among couples. I mean, it doesn't get much attention anymore. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, I guess, Nat King Cole, they couldn't show the show down south when he appeared on television. Yeah. So, I mean, now today no one would know what you're talking about when it comes to something like that. So I'd say we're making progress. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be, I guess, the closer you get to the finish line, the tougher it can be. Maybe it's like running a marathon. You get exhausted near the end, and it gets tougher. So maybe the final details being worked out can be tougher. But I think we are making progress, and it's certainly no one is going to be elected to office by saying segregation now and segregation tomorrow and segregation forever. I mean,
you know what I noticed, Rev? When you listen to Congressman King, to his credit, talking about politics, he did not use this session to denigrate someone else. He disagreed with people, but I can tell you this, and I mentioned this before, I was at a gathering where President Clinton spoke glowingly of Congressman Peter King, said, you make an agreement with Peter King, a handshake, that's all you need. You don't need any written document. And listening to you today, Congressman, it was that same spirit. You could oppose a person, but you don't have to destroy the person. And I think that is something that many of us yearn for. It's something we don't see much of today. And I think our young people in particular have to be given an example of what disagreement means. Disagreement without denigration, without destruction.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate what Bill Clinton said at that time. And if I can make this a little bit personal, when I was one of the only Republicans, in fact, I was the only Republican voting against for Bill Clinton on all those impeachment articles and on some other articles attached to it. But I remember the day I spoke in the House floor, it was very emotional because the lines were so well drawn. I said to Republicans why I thought this was not right, that whatever he did was not impeachable. And I said, right now, this is a great partisan moment. And, Republicans are enjoying this. I guarantee you, once we cross this border, once we go into the world of impeachment, which has only been done once in the 200 years of the history of the country, it's going to come back, and the next person to be impeached is going to be Republican. And it was with President Trump. And now it's almost people talk about impeachment like it's going to the mall. I mean, it's not. That was almost unspoken. And then we broke it, and it was not. I thought anyway. I was proud of it the way it did, and also Bill Clinton. He's another one. I think he's being treated much better by history than he was at the time. I mean, his first election, the congressional elections in '94, after his election, Republicans won everything. I think we picked up 65 seats, best election in 40 years. Bill Clinton was through. Well, the fact is, he was reelected. He's still standing, and he still is one of the most effective public speakers. And we look up on his record. Now, Republicans say, "Oh, why can't we go back to the days of Bill Clinton? When he was in office, no Republicans said a good word about him. Now they're saying how great it was during then."
Yeah, it's funny.
Wow. Well, Congressman, we always appreciate your balanced approach to this season and mature perspective on all of these things. It makes for great conversation, but also, it's how you have engaged in what we would call your ministry. Everything is a ministry. There is a summons from God to serve society in some way, and you've done that well. So thank you, Congressman.
And Rev, I would just add that Congressman Peter King transcends political differences. You can mention his name, whether it's to Democrats, you can mention his name to people of other faith groups, and all of them have something positive to say about Peter King, and even those who disagree with him. And I remember traveling with him to Israel. And even there were those who came over and hugged him and felt, thank you for your commitment to the state of Israel. So he's beloved by many, but even by those who take a different stance. And I just wish we could get back to that. The inauguration, I think the invocation is going to be given by the Cardinal, and the benediction is being given by Dr. Ari Berman, the president of Yeshiva University. I think that's the sequence. And maybe that's a moment that you have, a Catholic, a Jew, people of all faiths coming together and saying, this is our country. This is our, blessing, and let's protect it as much as possible without putting each other down in this nasty fashion.
That sounds so sweet and harmonious, but the Cardinals are going to take some heat for this, right?
Oh, yeah.
What's going to happen.
Yeah. And unnecessarily so.
That my mentor in all this, my role model, is Reverend Bernard. I think if he can put up a Rabbi Potasnik.
You see?
There you go.
Wait a minute, Ava. Where is HR? Where's the HR department? Where is that department?
That's how you end the segment.
We go back. How many years do I know you? Wow. A lot of years.
Many years. Yeah, back to the 90s. I go, wow, yeah. Yes, wow. A long time. And you've been doing some very tough times. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, you've been there for me, for my community, and we're just grateful to have you with us. You're a statesman. Not just, we talked to your congressman. One last thing I wanted to ask you. What are the speeches these guys give in Congress when the whole chamber is empty? What is that about? Is that like playing to the constituency at home? I'm speaking. There's nobody. It's like a bad church synagogue day where nobody comes to services.
Yes. Basically, that's more from the people from the smaller towns where they get. Here in New York, you have probably 15 to 20 members of Congress within the same media area. If you're from some place out in Montana or South Dakota, there's like one Congress. These guys travel around in helicopters, in their district. So anyway, when they're on television, it's covered on all the local networks. I mean, Jimmy Walsh was a congressman from Syracuse. He would get off the plane in Syracuse. There's 5 reporters waiting for him. In New York, unless you've been indicted or shot or something, they have 20s. I'm walking off the plane with Anthony Weiner and Charlie Rangel, and nobody cares. There's so many of us, unless you do something very, very good or more likely something very bad. But so a lot of them are appealing. That speech that you see, which is nobody in the audience, that could end up being the leading story on the evening news in South Dakota.
Wow. All right.
Good point.
Congressman
Peter King. And we'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on 77 WABC. Stay tuned.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the Rev and the Rabbi. Talk Radio 77 WABC and the all-new WABCRadio.com.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard. Great conversation.
Yeah, but two conversations. One with you about MLK Day and all that means, and one with Congressman Peter King. And I thought to myself, when I was in law school, we would often ask this question in different classes: what would a reasonable person do under these circumstances? And the standard of a reasonable person became really sacrosanct. And I think what we need to continue to emphasize is we need to be reasonable in our conversations with each other. We need to be reasonable in examining periods of history and what does it mean. If you can't be reasonable, where are you going? If we're just going to yell at each other, how long is that going to last?
Yeah, you're right. Reasonable individuals is critical. In conversation as we're going to move forward. But for whatever reason, people are not looking to be reasonable. They feel that if they're reasonable, if they're understanding, if they're empathetic, somehow they compromise their position.
Yeah, it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of weakness.
Exactly. But reasonable simply means, having sound judgment, being fair and sensible as we examine issues, as we talk about things. And I think we've lost that because everyone is it's idolatry, Rabbi. I'm telling you, it is idolatry. We worship our own opinion. What does your faith tradition say about that?
You look at the Talmud, replete with disagreements. School of Hillel, School of Shammai, all the rabbis who really disagreed with one another, but you didn't have the insulting of the other individual because of a disagreement. People didn't walk away from each other because of a disagreement. And today, it's rare to find people who stand together in spite of a disagreement. And if I can insult you publicly, I'm a hero. And I don't know what is the benefit of that. What do we accomplish with that? And again, social media, I talk about, the computer commandos, those who sit behind their computers and send out these emails as if someone is reading them, as if it has, if it matters, but it matters to them. They really think, by saying something outrageous, I'm going to get attention. It's not the way we need to be.
There are those who would say that, there is this emergence of a stronger sense of individualism within American culture. And that's one of the reasons we overemphasize our personal perspective. Have we gotten away from the collective? Because when I think about the revelation of community in relationship to God, as expressed through the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition, supposed to be, that the collective is more important than the individual. Is that true? Am I understanding that correctly?
In religious tradition, the collective, yeah,
the collective,
the prayers are written in the plural. We very rare to find something that begins I. It begins we. We talk about praying for the community. You're a member of the community. I recall years ago, Elie Wiesel, who I used to go listen to him speak in so many different arenas. And number one, he always spoke to you in a reasonable fashion. But secondly, he said he went to say Kaddish, the morning's prayer for his father. And there were 9 people there, and he walked in. He was the 10th. He completed the service because it was a quorum. He said, I felt part of a community, that there were people that were reaching out to me and I was reaching out to them. And we needs to be more important than I. We say it, we need to see it. Thank you, Rev.
Yeah. And we need to practice that. Yeah. So have we run out of time again?
We have. And, I don't know what that means in some circles. Have you run out of time? But we hope to be back next week.
Yep, same place. I saw the same bat channel. Forgive me. I'm dating myself here. But right here, 77 WABC, the Rev and the Rabbi. God bless.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.